This is Robbie McKenzie, Youth Ministry 6.3, which comes from Nehemiah 6:3. It says, "I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down." I have with me the one and only Jonathan McKee, who is actually has an excellent website, The Source for Youth Ministry. Jonathan, actually one of the first ways I got to know not really you, but your work is through your book. Do They Run When They See Me Coming? And that was one of the best books that kind of got me started in youth ministry 5 or 6 years ago. So it's so that's Jonathan McKee. We're actually talking about a book here recently that he co-authored, I believe, with David Smith, and it's a book that actually talks about leading teenagers and then letting your teenagers in turn become leaders as well. So if you kind of want to just go ahead and talk about your background in youth ministry, how long you've been at it, and give any sort of information there that you want to.
I've been a youth worker for about 20 years. I've been a parent for 18 years. And so basically I like kind of taking some of that experience, combining that with the research I do, and trying to turn around and help youth workers and parents by training them and providing free resources for them on our website. So that's it in a nutshell. We have the source for youthministry.com, and now we actually have the source for parents.com, and we just love helping adults make a lasting impact in the lives of kids.
By the way, just a side note, and I didn't even think about this, but I actually, one of the best videos, or at least lessons on bullying that I've seen, actually I saw it on YouTube, came from, I believe, your son spoke at an event that I saw, at least on YouTube, about bullying, and I thought that was one of the best lessons there. So you can kind of relay the message if you want to. I said that was super.
He was bullied, and a little bit. I was bullied. My dad was actually bullied, and so we talked about it. It's tough being a Christian at school and add into that, when you're a nerd like me, and when you have Jaws on your wall as your stuff like that, you add that, then you're kind of like, you add nerdly effects to that, then you're definitely, you're thrown in several garbage cans per lunch in the cafeteria. But no, that was fun. Yeah, Alec did a good job on that. We were speaking at a camp, and he spoke to probably about 400, if I remember, 300 or 400 kids that day, and he just kind of shared his heart on bullying, and he just really challenged them to, that they could make a difference by making the choice to just care for someone and love someone, and he did good. I actually last weekend spoke with my 13-year-old daughter, spoke on parenting, and she spoke in front of, she preached 3 services at one church with me, and then 2 services in this church last weekend, I was talking about parenting and building values into your kids, and she kind of basically shared the teenage perspective on what it's like to, she talked about the process we do in our house, where when she wants to download a song, she brings it to me and we talk about it. She kind of gave the perspective. She's all, we don't always agree, but, I'm glad I don't have a dad who just says yes to everything, and it's neat. And parents are like, I loved hearing her. I'm like, yeah. So she showed me up. They didn't love hearing me.
I was about to say.
It's kind of fun every once in a while talking to my kids.
Absolutely. Talking about your book that you co-authored, and it's about teenage leadership. Why, at the core of youth ministry, why do we even need teenage leadership?
Yeah, well, it's teenage leadership. It's funny. Let's define that term, because a lot of people use the term student leadership.
Right.
And if you ask why do we need student leadership, it's funny how many people start thinking about different things. In the youth ministry world, people have used student leadership. As a matter of fact, here we go. Here's an old student leadership. Ready?
Oh, wow.
Student leaders. Check that one out, okay? And this
awesome.
actually is a great book from late 80s, early 90s from Ray Johnson. Fantastic book, actually. I think it's probably one of the best student leadership books out. I'm not just saying it because Ray's a friend, but it's Ray's a good guy, and Youth Specialties published that back in the day, and it was just kind of one of those things that he, Wayne Rice, and some other people put their heads together, and it was the thing that they were actually, back when YS was having their one-day seminar, they taught that great student leadership stuff, and that book, books to follow, there's only been a handful of student leadership books written, but those books all talk about the principle of, we as youth workers notice that there's certain kids that their faith they're not just growing in their faith, they actually they want to do something with it. Like it's overflowing. They want to reach their friends. They want to grow to the point where they start using their gifts and doing that. Now, historically, books like this one and other ones have all said those are our student leaders. Now, the thing that's interesting is I really don't care what you call them, okay? Because the world might actually have issue with that. A leader is someone who casts vision for the organization. A leader is someone who people follow. If David and I mentioned in the book, if a plane crashes in the Himalayas and somebody pops up and goes, "This way, follow me," and everybody's like, "We will follow him. He is our leader." That's a leader. People will follow. That's the world, how the world defines leadership. I think the thing that people talk about in books like this, our book, is they're talking about, hey, when we notice kids that not only need to grow but want to start using their gifts and serving, well, guess what? Some of the gifts aren't up front, like I'm the big guy in front of the, I want to stand in front of the room and I'm the speaker. I'm the guy that's an up front, gregarious guy. Sometimes leadership, according to these books, is, or let's just say that thing that they notice in students that want to grow and use their gifts. What about the gift of compassion? Sure. What about the gift of helps? What about these behind-the-scenes gifts? Sometimes one of their student leaders will be the guy at the soundboard who's this quiet kid. Would the world necessarily call them a leader? Well, let me just be the first to tell you in here, I'm pulling out books. So in our book right here, in Ministry by Teenagers, we don't care what you call them, okay? We actually didn't say, these are necessarily, and they actually, Zondervan especially said, developing leaders from within.
Right.
We actually say straight up, we're going to go ahead and use the term leader because that's what in the youth ministry world people are used to hearing. They're used to hearing this student leaders. Again, semantics. Mm-hmm. Whatever that is, when you see a group of kids who you think, man, they have potential, I'd like to see them grow in their faith. I'd like to see them start using their gifts to reach out, whatever it is, whether it's behind the scenes or up front. And that's what this book is about. So when you ask the question, do we even need teenage leadership? Whether we need, to start developing the next president of the America, the America of the America. Not really.
I was wondering about that.
Of the United States. That's not important. What is important is, absolutely, seeing kids grow, use their gifts. And to be honest, the reason we wrote this is, you're a youth worker. I'm a youth worker. Forever now, we've been hearing people talk about, kids are walking away from their faith. And there's been some weird numbers during that. Only 4% of teenagers actually stay with their faith,
Right.
Or people are, have all these different figures and stuff. But bottom line, anybody in youth ministry has noticed that sometimes you lead a kid to Christ and they slip away and they never grow in their faith and they do end up walking away. And a lot of us are sitting around going, why? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are speculating. It's because we played too much dodgeball and we aren't serious enough we found, David and I both thought, there's a lot of speculation and not a lot of application. There's not a lot of, hey, here's some stuff we can do to help kids grow. And so in our book, we really want to provide all kinds of resources that help kids do that. Because this is not a new problem. You can open up Deuteronomy 6, mm-hmm. and there Moses implored the adults, hey, teach these principles to your kids as you get up, as you walk along the road, as you go to bed, remember, on your hands, in your head, it's like in everything you do, everything you think about. He said, don't forget to do this. If you fast forward, Joshua was the next leader. Joshua said that. He said, choose this day who you should follow. As for me and my house, we'll follow the Lord. So he was doing it. But when he died out, Judges 2, Joshua dies out. And it says another generation grew up, one that did not know God and did not do what he said. They served the Baals. They did it. So the parents didn't do their job. So Dave and I thought, we want to help adults. In this one, this is helping youth leaders. If we're talking to parents, parent book, okay? But Dave and I, in this book, Ministry by Teenagers, we thought, let's help these adults that are working in youth ministry, youth workers, paid or volunteer, be able to start helping kids grow in their faith, using their gifts, and if you want to call that leading,
sure,
ministering, you name it.
I was thinking, and another question that I have, and I'm jumping a little bit, but
That's fine.
When I think about Satan's snares and the traps that he
Sure.
employs, and you, I think, at least to me, you alluded to one, that the jargon of leadership. What is leadership? Well, maybe a snare is that leadership is only the upfront and vocal and charismatic people, which is possibly a snare. But what are some other, when it comes to leadership, whatever we mean by that, what are some snares that Satan throws at us?
Well, it's funny, when you say, you almost touched on two issues there, because first of all, there is this kind of like, our leader is that one person up front who has upfront skills, Well, that's what we think of when we think of Mother Teresa right away, right? Her ability to speak. No, I mean, come on, right. Yeah, there's people out there whose gifts were used in such mighty ways, and as it is, Mother Teresa actually was able to communicate well. There's finding kids' gifts. There's a variety of gifts. My wife, she would kill me if I ever made her stand up on a stage. But she's an amazing person. I mean, she's just a godly woman, and she does so much, so many amazing things, and God uses her gifts in her way. But she would never want to be up front. So yeah, that kind of that would be those kind of semantics, or those kind of boxes we put. This is what our student leaders should look like. That would be a sad thing. The snares, I think, that Satan has for our kids. I mean, there's tons of snares, but when it comes to leadership, I think the biggest, when it comes to this group of, I'm going to call it student ministers, this group of students we have that I keep pulling books. In my Connect book, I talk about 6 different types of kids. And of the 6 types of kids, one of them is what I call the looking for ministry kid. And that's the kid that, there's the growing kid who's growing in their faith, but the looking for ministry kid is the one who actually is like, I'd like to start using my gifts. I'd like to reach out to my friends. The looking for ministry kid is the one who, wants to actually use those gifts to reach out or do something. I think the biggest snare for that kid is pride.
Yep.
It was what the Pharisees struggled with. It's what so many of us struggle with. And I think pride is the thing that that so often I see with students, because I think it's sometimes comes to be a look at me, I'm a student leader, look at the, and the reputation, I do get to stand up front and whatever. And so I think the best thing we can do, and we actually spend a whole chapter in the book talking about pitfalls and the common snares that Satan uses. But pride, I think the thing is, just constantly in our training with our student leadership team, we need to constantly talk about Jesus' model of leadership, which was the servant model of leadership.
Absolutely.
Actually get our kids washing feet, physically washing feet. Have them constantly in put in situations where they are serving. When if your student leadership team is ever involved in events or in youth group or whatever, have them not just necessarily up front and look at me, but more like, hey, your primary job as the student minister, as the kid looking for ministry, is to sit by that shy kid, is to greet the kid at the door that nobody else is talking to and hang with them. So kind of get them in these roles that take humility to do, And I think battling pride, that would be the one snare I'd say would be the one that I think you got to really nip in the bud.
Absolutely.
How do you nip in the
Anyway. No, that's right. How do you now going back? How do you, when you talk about training, because training is so important, training and maintaining. How do you do that when it comes to teenage leadership?
Well, there's so many different ways to do it. If you actually, a lot of people, if we're using the term student leadership, they'll have a student leadership team, and with the official team, I think one thing that's important is to have a regular training time within that. But this could be as simple as like developing, ministry in a teenager could be as simple as a guy in your church. If there's a church with no youth ministry, and there's a guy in a church who notices potential in a kid, and this guy notices this young teenage man, or a godly woman notices a young teenage girl and says, hey, let me mentor you and disciple you. And they start just that discipleship process and talking about these issues. Training could be as simple as, hey, I notice you have the gift of compassion. Let's let you start using that gift. Let's read this book on compassion, and let's go through this book of the Bible, and now let's go out and to this convalescent home and start using this. So hands-on kind of training. If it's more the official, hey, we have a student ministry team, which is the group of students that use their gifts and do stuff, and we meet every other Sunday right after church, and we have a 2-hour meeting. Sometimes those end up being, hey, let's immediately dismiss your teams. Worship people, you go work on songs for Thursday. Skit team, develop a skit. Don't team, go start working on your posters for the event.
Oh, yeah.
And our whole student leadership team ends up being this giant, to-do thing. And also we start focusing so much on program, we forget. I think you got to have a training time in there where you're in the Word, where you're saying, man, here's what Jesus did. If you were teaching on pride, and I would teach about where Jesus modeled and washed feet, and then maybe have them wash each other's feet. Training on evangelism. Evangelism is a huge part of what we do, and I think it would be neat to be able to have every kid be able to verbalize. This is neat. The timing of this is neat. My daughter shared with me 2 days ago that she was at school, and her friend was talking to her about real life issues, and my daughter brought up her faith, and my daughter simply said, have I ever told you what I believe? And her friend goes, no, what do you believe?
That's awesome.
And also my daughter's like, and I had to share what I believe. I'm like, well, what did you say? Talk about God loves me, and Jesus died, and if we put our faith in Him, and she basically brought, well, I like to train all our student leaderships to be able to do that, and so I think it's fun to and if you can't do it yourself, show up, dare to share a video, with where Greg Steer does it, or there's different curriculums out there where you can do that. But I would usually train my kids how to do that, and then I would sit and I would literally divide them into pairs and say, okay, right now you're sitting with your friend in PE class, and they go, well, I haven't ever heard. What do you believe? Answer that question. And I just train them how to answer it and make them do it. So I actually hands-on have them do that right there. And then I think an important part of training is also, if the skit team needs to work on skit skills, that's great. But to be honest, I think that's the least of what we do. We get so focused on, well, our worship team needs to work on next Thursday's songs. No offense, but forget next Thursday's song.
Right.
Let's get them growing. Does it really matter about, I don't want to minimize any of the duties, but we get so caught up in program that we forget about it. I still think program's great. I think it's important to have good songs and be well rehearsed, but not at the expense of, learning these other principles. So we need to be constantly making this training, this teaching a priority.
Your book is, I know for me, going to be invaluable when it comes to what it can do for my ministry here, and I'm sure with many other ministries as well. By the way, that sounds bad when you say a book is invaluable. It's like, well,
it's invaluable.
Right.
It's like the back of it says
exactly
98.
Right.
Is that invaluable or
yes.
valuable?
So you're saying this book does not have any value to me whatsoever? No, but
it's super mega valuable.
Right.
It's a mega book.
Exactly. But what are some other resources that could help people like me and youth ministers, and if there's no youth ministers, volunteers or teenagers, for crying out loud? I mean, what are some other resources that could help us out when it comes to training, maintaining, and all that when it comes to leadership?
Sure, because if you today decided, I want to, I'd like to develop these student ministers, so to speak.
Right.
I want to help kids grow in their faith. I want to, here I keep grabbing books. Jim Burns, in The Youth Builder, he said, where's this quote? I love it. I don't know what page I have it. Here's what he said. He said, are we creating spectators of the kingdom or participators and servants for the kingdom? In other words, are we just, gonna just run ship and tell kids, show up, sit down, and shut up, and and sing these songs? Are we gonna have spectators of the kingdom or participators and servants for the kingdom? And this great book by Jim, old school, but yes, it's still a great book. When he's, so if you're a youth worker who says, man, I'd love to do this. Okay, I'm convinced I want to do it. How do I do it? And the reason, to be honest, we wrote this book is we wanted to give them okay, so you want to start a student ministry team? Here's how. How do you select your leaders? If you don't have this book, how do you do it? Are there resources out there? That's what you're asking. Yeah, I think there's tons of good stuff. Our website, The Source for Youth Ministry, our whole idea is to put free resources in the hands of youth workers. Well, if you go to the top of the page on thesourceforyouthministry.com or thesource4ym.com, there's a thing that says training tools. Like, right, you'll see free resources and ideas, and you'll see training tools. And you click on that training tools drop down. There's a thing that says free training tools, and you go right there. There's tons of training tools. It says like help me or help my leader. So you go, well, help me. Well, help me. There's articles about developing, student ministers. There's actually an article called Ministry by Teenagers that talks about the need and a little bit how to do it. There's another one about student leadership. If you click on Help My Leaders, we provide a free PowerPoint that you can give your leaders, telling them, here's step one, we need to do this, we need to select people, and it actually goes through the process of how do you select, and that's all free. So that's a free resource. You don't have to buy the book, So that's all like on our training tools page. There's other great, man, I tell you, when I did this with my student leadership team, last student leadership team I helped with was when my son, who's 18 now, was in junior high. So it's been about 4 years since I specifically helped on a student leadership team. When he was there, I helped with his team, and we didn't have this book or that website or whatever. Man, we just constantly. I don't mean to sound like how shallow of us. We kept going to the Word of God, but we did. We were like, oh, hey, you know what? These kids need to learn how to share their faith. Let's look at what Jesus did. And we would constantly find scriptures, and we'd constantly find stuff. We just were finding stuff out there that work. If we're like, hey man, we need to have compassion. Let's model how Jesus had compassion. Hey, there's these outsiders that aren't fitting in. Boy, look at Zacchaeus. Look at the woman at the well. And we would read, and we constantly had kids reading these scriptures, and we said, now, where do we see women like the girls like the woman at the well? Where do we see? Are there guys like Zacchaeus at your school? Guys that are kind of real, maybe pains in the butt. Maybe they rip people off. Maybe they're, and everybody else is going, ooh, don't be his friend. What do you do with them? What do you do if they walk in this youth room? How do you treat? So man, sometimes you can just, it's amazing how you can just use the Word of God and go, what are some of the things that we need to learn here? And we constantly drew from the Word of God. We also, it's nice to draw from other people's experience. This, back in the 90s, I used this developing student leaders because he has, just kind of like what our book does, he's got like all these like ready-made forms, we know that people are looking for stuff, so that's why David and I put in here, we have a student leadership application. We have a, the application, a commitment form, mentor forms. We have these pre-made ministry areas, so if you want to be on the missions team or the drama team, and we give all kinds of guidance about it. That we kind of made some stuff so that and created the wheel, so you don't have to recreate the wheel. So there's resources out there like that. There's a handful of student leadership books that do that. Doug Fields writes a good book to put in the hands of your students. That's it's Help I'm a Student Leader, I think is the title of it. Yeah, and it's the one where. And it's to students, so it's not one that tells you how to do student leadership. It's one that you would actually give your student leaders. So this would be the book for you. Your student leaders would each get the Doug Fields book, and it just gives them things, kind of almost devotional ideas to think about on, hey, as a student leader, I should watch out for pride. Hey, as a student leader, I should be thinking about how to, reach my neighbor. Who is my neighbor? As a student. So there's great resources like that as well. And Doug's always got great resources.
Absolutely. Last question. If, say I'm a newbie, I'm a youth minister who just now started his or her first job, in the first 3 to 6 months, I don't know what to do, I'm freaking out a little bit. What one bit of advice would you give me?
Oh man, one thing.
Right. If you have one
I wrote
thing.
That Connect book. My buddy called me up and he goes, if you could train your youth leaders, one thing, what would you? And I was like, And I was like, Connect with kids, man. Learn how to love them. One thing. So if I was going to tell a youth leader one thing that would be because there's so many things I think about, like connecting with kids, equipping other leaders. I think that if it was, I would also want to spend time with, let me think, developing leaders.
And it's their first full-time job.
I wonder if I could say building into people, because basically I want to do several things. I want to build into kids that don't. Yeah, let's think of this. Okay, so I'm thinking of my Connect book. In my Connect book, I talk about outreach kids and I talk about discipleship kids. I think I would want to build into people, and basically I'd say build into kids, build into adults. That'd be the simple way of saying it. But build into kids. I would tell the youth leader, make sure you get a time to build into kids that don't know Jesus. Because Jesus constantly hung out with the crowds and the fringe people, the people that were just kind of not in the synagogues, right? He was out there. Take time to do that. That means whether it means getting on campus, going to a football game, going to a skateboard park. Find time to hang out with people that don't know him and build into them and have an opportunity to affirm them and get to know them and befriend them. Have time to build into kids that do know Jesus. They have at one time accepted Christ and they want to grow. Your student leaders, so to speak. Helping them grow. So sometimes student leaders are really good at people that in youth ministry, adults, are either good at one or the other of that. They're either really good at outreach kids or they're really good at kids that already know Christ, but they aren't good at both. I'd say really make sure that you build into both those kinds of kids, those who haven't accepted Christ yet and those who have accepted Christ. Then I'd say build into adults, and because you can't do it alone. You can't be the one person who's trying to do it all. So you really need to focus a lot of your time building into adults and finding other adults who have a passion for evangelism or compassionate care for kids. This could even be parents of kids, and saying, hey, guess what? You can make an incredible, lasting difference in kids' lives, and you'd be awesome. And literally going out and recruiting. People are terrible recruiters. They make an announcement in the bulletin or whatever. That's why I wrote a whole book about recruiting kids, the new breed. Let's talk about this new breed of youth worker that so many youth workers out there, they think they can just do it alone. Don't do it alone. Find other people to bring alongside and build into them, because that way each of them can be building into those outreach kids and to those kids that have, that know Jesus, and building into people. So relational ministry is where it's at. Building into people. I think that's probably the best way to say it.
That's great. This has been another, Jonathan, hold on. This has been another episode of Youth Ministry 6.3 with Jonathan McKee. Jonathan, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I appreciate you so much.
Glad to be here.